What do I need to know about your background growing up in small town Montana to understand your story?
Redneck shit. I mean, we grew up just driving dirt roads in high school, spotlighting. I mean, just running around the backwoods, kind of. I grew up on a little ranch down in Forsyth, Montana. It's a family ranch. My brother runs it now. And for as long as I can remember, we were just either working cattle or hunting. I mean, that's all we pretty much had planned.
Okay.
And I was never too much into the cattle stuff. I was always more of running around with my bow, shooting stuff, just trying to chase anything I could. And my brother really liked the cattle stuff.
Okay.
So kind of we're not split, and he's a rancher and I do all the hunting stuff. So
it seems like it was natural.
Yeah, it works out good. And so he doesn't hunt much, and then I do some hunts out there on the ranch now.
Okay.
And
Is it when you're growing up like that, is there anything you said that you you didn't enjoy the cattle part and like maybe some of the other stuff that was on the ranch? Do you end up falling in love for it by the time that you leave, or is it always just like, fuck, we got to run cattle again today?
It's not bad, really. We don't run a huge operation, so we were never like a hardcore cattle family. Like my brother, he's still a full-time teacher. He runs about 60 head.
Okay.
Enough to keep him busy in the summers and his side time. But I just went to a branding 3 weeks ago. My brother had his branding, and I show up every year and still get to wrestle cattle, and it's a good time. And I actually had some turkey clients in, and they were from Missouri, and they'd never been to a branding before.
Oh, damn.
And so I took them down there, and they went to their first branding, and they thought it was the coolest thing ever. Got the full Montana experience. So
Yeah,
it's cool to share that with people that don't really get to be around it as much.
For the people who don't know about like the culture around brandings, explain to me a little bit, because I feel like it's like getting an invitation to the cookout, man. That's kind of a big deal.
Yeah, that's the best part of it too.
Yeah.
Yeah, the cookout. It's pretty cool. Like my brother, he doesn't really pay any help. It's just all the ranchers around the valley. They come help him, and he goes help them. And it's a small world, the ranching world down there, and so it's pretty cool to see everybody come down and help out and make things work for one neighbor, and then everybody else goes helps the other neighbor. So it's pretty cool.
Is it kind of a badge of honor a little bit to get invited to something like that if you're not somebody from that town?
Yeah, I mean it's cool. I mean, they trust you and want you to be a part of it, and some brandings are a lot more intense than the others. Some people are just kicking back beer and having a good time, and the other guys are type A and just, we got to get this done and then we can have some fun. So
right.
It all kind of depends on the branding and the family. They're all pretty good people though.
Right on. So growing up in Forsyth, when you're on a family ranch and you're like, it sounds like you're kind of like doing create your own adventure sort of thing, where you've got your bow, you're running around, there's a cattle operation going on. I think that's a lot different than how kids grow up today.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I remember one time I got in the biggest trouble because I took a rope, and my dad had some bulls in the pen. And I went out and I roped one, and the bulls are pretty tame, and they didn't really freak out. And I had it roped around the neck, but then I just tied it to a post and left it. And my dad came home, and he's got a bull tied to a post, and he's looking at me, and I'm just like, you just get bored and you find crazy stuff to do.
Yeah. Do you think any of the things that you do now, or any of like the ways that you grew up, kind of played out differently because of growing up on a small ranch as opposed to like growing up in the suburbs or in a bigger town?
Oh, for sure. I don't think if I was exposed to all the things I was as a child, I don't know if I'd be on the path I am now. Just taking this route. You just grow up different. It's not like you're going to the mall or you're going to the movies or you're hanging out. Like when you hang out with your buddies, it's like, let's go fishing or let's go drive a dirt road or do anything but be in town. So
looking back on it, do you appreciate that that's how you grew up?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. I mean, now living in Billings, I kind of see kids growing up here, and I'm like, man, I would not want to grow up in town for sure.
Yeah. I grew up in the suburbs in Boise. And for us, it was like, I think that people our age grew up in the perfect time because technology, we kind of grew up like with technology, like I think that flip phones were barely out when we were kids.
The jukes.
The jukes. And then by the time we were in junior high, there was like the slide out keyboards, and like iPhones kind of rolled around like early high school, late middle school kind of thing. But I think I look at that now and I was like, when we were kids, if you had a bike, like you've got something to do.
Yeah,
like,
absolutely.
We'd ride around, we'd build like bike jumps, we'd go screw around and like go ding dong ditching, and like the only thing that you needed was a bike.
Yep.
And I feel
Get
like
anywhere.
Yeah, and I feel like now I'm almost glad that we didn't have as many options of things to entertain us because we had to get creative with things. You know what I'm saying? But I can only imagine what it was like for you guys trying to be like you don't even have a neighborhood full of kids that are doing shit.
Right.
know?
Yeah. Well, we grew up, I think when I was about 3rd or 4th grade, we moved to town.
Okay.
And Forsyth's a very small town. I think I had, when I was there, 16, 17 kids in my class.
Okay.
And so by the time I was in school, I did get to go to, like, I grew up in town.
Perfect.
But I remember we had this thing called the rope swing. And someone climbed up on this giant cottonwood and tied this rope down, and it hung up over the river. And so every day people would ride their bikes to the rope swing, and there'd be sometimes 15, 20 kids there all throughout the town. And everybody's just swinging off this rope into the river.
So sick.
Yeah, it's so fun. But somebody actually landed on a stick, and it gouged like almost like a foot up his leg. The
Holy
stick did,
cow.
and so the city went down and cut the rope down. And no more.
How about we start with the branch and then we'll cut the rope?
Yeah,
That
exactly.
doesn't work.
But yeah, it was pretty cool. Just it was like a neighborhood thing. Everybody showed up to the rope swing and climbed up the tree and swung way off the rope into the river.
Yeah, that's how it was when I was growing up. We had like 3 neighborhoods that were all connected, but they were connected by like walking or bike paths. And so it was great because you couldn't drive between all the neighborhoods super easily, but we had, I don't know, like a 2-mile radius that was all connected. And so again, if you had a bike, you were good.
Yeah.
But literally right across from my grandparents' house, there was a empty lot that the school district owned that they didn't do anything with until like 2 years ago. And so we've got this like massive dirt lot to do whatever we want with, and grandma and grandpa are right across the street. And so we had some friends that were like, I don't know if you can be professional when you're a kid, but they were on a motocross circuit all the time.
Oh yeah.
And they knew how to like build bike tracks and jumps and all that kind of stuff. So we'd hook up the hose to my grandparents spigot and go out there with a couple shovels, and we had this like sick bike jump park.
Really, that's sweet.
And that was like every day after school that it was like above probably 40 degrees. We're like, all right, we'll see you at the jumps.
Yeah.
It was so much fun.
Who's gonna get hurt today?
Yeah, exactly. What was it like making that transition though, going from, you know, growing up in like your super early years to moving back in town and kind of like having that shift?
It was almost nice because I was closer to my friends. I mean, we were pretty, not remote, but I was 18 miles out of town down on our ranch. So it was actually nice kind of growing up with being able to ride your bike and hang out with people like that. So that made it easier. And then there was always the ranch to go hang out on that was 15 minutes away. So that didn't really get real popular for me to like till I got my driver's license. And then we were kind of really doing the redneck stuff.
Gotcha. Right on. So once I feel like, I mean, you and I met through sports, obviously. When you look at like, I'd still consider Laurel like kind of smaller town Montana.
For sure.
What kind of role did sports play in your life once you got to Laurel and once you started like kind of coming up through high school and through college?
Sports are really big in Laurel, actually. Their community is huge on their sports. So that was kind of, I mean, Forsyth is too, but just being at a bigger school where everything's a little bit bigger, it was kind of different, but I kind of adapted early. I had some friends there that had moved there as well, so I came in with knowing people, which made it a lot easier. But yeah, the sports were a lot more competitive, and it kind of pushed me to be a little bit more competitive and have to try a little bit harder, I guess, in the off season, I would say.
Right.
Which helped me in the long run for sure.
And you had a pretty good go of it in high school, right? Did you play quarterback in high school?
I did,
also?
yeah.
Okay.
Yep. It was we had a good run. We were always pretty. I mean, we made a good push in the playoffs every year and never quite made it.
Yeah.
One of those deals.
That's one of the things that's I think super interesting talking to other people who are entrepreneurs now, but kind of grew up in athletics, because I think that you get a lot of intangible lessons that you can't really get anywhere else. Like
yeah, for sure.
Like you're kind of like you're forced into leadership positions in a lot of different ways that you probably wouldn't otherwise. You have to learn hard work. You learn like how to get your ego stomped on, whether it's losses or getting benched or like whatever the thing is.
Yep.
But I also think that it's really easy to attach your identity to sports.
Yeah.
And we were talking a little bit off mic about, you know, you obviously had a good high school career, went and played in college. What kind of experience did you have as it came to like having your identity attached to sports while you're still playing?
I think the hardest part was the third game in my senior year. I broke my leg and tore a bunch of ligaments in my ankle. And at that point, sports was, you know, that was my whole identity. You know, I didn't really do anything else. I didn't get a hunt because of sports. You know, that's what I based my whole life off of during high school, is I looked forward to sports. So when I broke my leg my senior year, it was hard because it was hard for me even to show up to practice. I didn't even want to go to the games. You know, I was crushed. And my whole plan going out of high school was like, I'm going to go play college football. And I was getting pretty good looks, like Cat Grizz and then all the NAIAs in here. And I was like, that's what I wanted to do. And after breaking my leg, and I came back and I played basketball, and I never felt right? You know, and so I was hemming and hawing between whether I wanted to still continue this football career. And I ended up being really good at javelin in high school.
Oh, shit. Okay.
And since my sophomore year, I was probably top 15 in the nation throwing javelin.
Wow.
And I never liked it. Like, track was never my love. I just did it because I was really good at throwing a spear, and it was kind of cool. And so then I got into my senior year of track, and I was getting a lot of, like, everywhere in this nation was sending me letters for track. And I have this whole box that they're just full of every college you could think of sent me a letter, and I just hardly even opened them.
Really?
I was getting calls from like the Tar Heels, Oregon, Washington State, USC for javelin, and I just kind of blew it all off.
Damn.
Yeah.
How come?
I never was into it. You know, I didn't really, and I had a lot of Ivy League schools looking at me, and I didn't have the grades and stuff for that to go there.
Right.
And I just wasn't in the track, and it just wasn't cool to me. And I wanted to play football, you know.
Okay.
And so then I had a good senior year track, and I was hemming and hawing, and the Grizz offered me a really good scholarship to go throw the jav. And then I kind of verbally committed to Rocky, but I told him, I was like, I'm still going to kind of see what I'm going to get for jav. And that Grizz offer came up, and I was like, yeah, I'm going to go do that.
Okay.
So I took the Grizz offer, and I never really thought I was going to be where I was previous to breaking my leg for football. That was always in the back of my mind. So I went to the Missoula to throw jav, and right when I got there, I started going to all these track workouts and the meetings, and I was like, you know, like, I ain't putting the time in for this for track.
Right.
And so kind of right away, I knew that's not what I wanted to do. So I got a hold of Petrino like 2 months into school and was like, hey, I want to come play football. And so he was like, yeah, absolutely. So I went back. I transferred that semester to Rocky and came in with you guys for the spring. And I was thinking, I was not in a right head mind up in Missoula. Like, I knew I wasn't supposed to be there.
Gotcha.
And I kind of just started partying my way through after that. Yeah, school was kind of going bad. I was going out all the time. So I get to Rocky, and I'm hoping like football is going to fix everything, you know?
Yeah.
And I loved it. I made great connections. I met you. I met some of the guys I still talk to every day. Yeah. And so I don't regret any of that at all. And when I was there, I just never felt like I was as good as I was before I broke my leg, if that makes sense.
Was it like in the back of your mind?
Yeah, all the time. And I could feel it in my like ankle, and I could feel it in there. And I was just like, I'm never going to be as explosive as I was. And I felt like that. And it was probably all in my head. You know, I probably was fine, you know. And I just never felt like I was ever going to be the player. And every day I fucking was thinking about the mountains. Really? I wanted to go hunting so bad. And so I was talking to my mom, and she was like, just stick it out, you know. And school was not going that great. I really had nowhere, like, I was just going to school. You know, I didn't have any ideas.
Majoring in football?
Yeah, pretty much, man. I was majoring in football and drinking beer with the boys.
Yeah.
You know, I wasn't going anywhere. And I remember after the coaching change, that wasn't my decision because of the coaching change, you know.
Right.
But it was literally a week before summer camp, dude. I called Donovan, I called Stutz, and I was like, actually, I don't even know if I called Stutz. I think he texted me and I told him, but I called Donovan, and I was like, I'm done, dude. I don't want to do this anymore. And I remember I only told a few people. I called Jason, called a few people, and I just kind of wanted someone to tell me that, like, that's okay, you know?
Gotcha.
Like, just some reassurance, like, if that's not what you want to do, that's okay. And so I kind of got that, and I just made the decision. I was like, I'm done. And so I quit, and it was right before fall camp, and elk season started in like 2 weeks or something like that.
So at least you got the carrot dangling right there.
Yeah, I did. Okay. I had it, and I had all my gear, and I called one of my childhood best friends, and I was like, let's go elk hunting. And he was like, yeah, let's do it. So we packed for a 10-day trip, and we were just going to go. And when I went in there, and the first day I shot a black bear with my bow. Damn. And I was like, this is what I'm fucking supposed to be doing.
Really?
Like, it was just kind of eye-opening, and I just, like, it was probably one of my most memorable trips now, because we just, like, we put a dot on the map, packed all our gear up, and we hiked in there. We were camping, and I remember the first morning we opened up the tent, and there's just elk bugling in this meadow in front of us going crazy. And we were just stoked, you know.
Must have been a beautiful thing to wake up to.
Yeah, also. It was also piss and rain, so it was kind of wet out, but we were like, we're going. And we went, and we elk hunted that morning, and we didn't see anything. And my buddy built a fire, and he was kind of drying off, warming up next to it. And I was like, I'm going to go check up in this meadow up here. I saw on my maps that there's kind of like this little spring. And he was like, all right. And so I go up into that spring, and I check it out. It's about a mile from him, and there's just elk sign everywhere, and it looked good. And so I come back to him, and I was like, I'm going to go back into that spring. And he's like, okay, I'm going to go back up where we were on these elk this morning. And so I go back into that spring that evening, and I'm cow calling, and I can have these bulls kind of responding to me. Mm-hmm. And this one bull, he lights off to this cow call, and he's pretty close. And I'm like, oh, shit, I better get ready. And so I'm kind of sitting on this log getting ready, and there's just, it's a beautiful little scene. It's just this, like, natural spring and all these, like, willows coming out, and it's a good spot. And I hear this just branches just break, and something's barreling through the timber toward me. And I think it's this elk, so I'm getting all ready, and out steps this big old black bear. And I'm like, oh, shit. And I have a black bear tag, so it's all good, but I just wasn't, not even expecting it. It's at 40 yards just walking at me, but it was coming into my cow call. It was
crazy.
Yeah, and so I was like, okay. And so it comes around this corner, and I remember I had this face-off with this black bear at about 10 yards, and he's looking, like, right at me, and I'm full draw, and he can see me at this point. I have my bow back, and I remember I had this, like, quick, like, 2-second thought, like, is this a good idea? Like, what happens after I let this arrow go? And I just remember I was like, fuck it. And I just shot him right there. And luckily he whipped around and went out. And I remember I came back to camp, and I was like, yeah, I just shot a bear. And my buddy would not believe me for the life of me. And so the next morning, because I didn't want to go deal with it that night, we were in pretty heavy grizzly country.
Right.
And I could hear this bear kind of run off into timber. And I was like, I better just come back with a little bit of backup here.
For sure.
So he wouldn't believe me for the life of me. And then I brought him in the next day, and we come around in this blood trail, and there's this big old black bear laying there with an arrow in it. And it was like, that was when I knew. I was like, this is what I want to be doing for sure.
What a cool moment right as you left too.
Yeah, it was pretty wild. It kind of ruined our elk hunt because we had to get that bear out of there. But yeah, it was like, I've had a few moments like that hunting where it's like, this is what you're supposed to be doing.
Yeah. I want to backtrack. I want to get into some of those stories, but I want to backtrack a little bit first I think that there's a lot of people, whether it's school or work or something like that, that have probably made a lot of calls like you made when you were deciding to leave. Mm-hmm. And I don't think it's any secret that when you're growing up, you're told constantly that there's like this specific path that you're supposed to stay on. Yep. Right. Like if you're an athlete, you're supposed to get a D1 scholarship or get a full ride somewhere. You're supposed to stay there for 4 years, and then you figure it out afterwards and blah, blah, blah. And I think it takes a lot to get off of that path, especially when you've got something that's calling to you, because it's like everybody around you is telling you that, like, you are a football player, right. You are a student athlete, you are blah, blah, blah. Talk to me a little bit about like why you were actually able to like silence that noise a little bit and make a decision that was based on you and not just what everybody around you thought.
Yeah, that decision was pretty hard because like my grandparents, they were big about you graduate college, you get a degree, and like all of my siblings have followed that role and they went with it. And so it was really hard for me to make that decision because I felt like I was disappointing, you know what I mean, mm-hmm. by not finishing college and then I didn't want to quit. In the back of my mind, you quit something and you're going to quit the rest of your life. You know what I mean?
Well, so it wasn't just about like, I don't really want to play football anymore. It was like, I better not create a pattern here.
Yes, exactly. And I still look back and I'm like, what would have happened if I would have just stayed 4 years and played football and then built all this? Yeah. But obviously I would have been way more behind than I am now. Mm-hmm. So it kind of goes hand in hand, but I wasn't trying to let people down. I didn't want to seem like a, you can get that stigma as like a loser. You just drop out of college and you're not doing anything. So I knew I had to do something. And so after that year of, I guess that fall of just hunting straight when I quit, I knew I had to like go down this path. And that's when COVID hit and everything. So that's when I was like, well, I've always been pretty interested in taxidermy. And I found out there was a school here in Billings. And so I signed up for that, and it was like a couple-month wait. And so I was like, well, I have to do something. So I'm going to go to taxidermy school and learn it, whether I do anything with it or not, mm-hmm. So I went to the bank and took out a loan to go to taxidermy school because I was like, you have to have at least a trade, right. Have something to build off of. And so that's kind of where I went there. But yeah, it was hard to quit. I mean, mostly for my grandparents. I didn't want to let them down and stuff like that.
For somebody else who might be in those shoes, whether it's like leaving their corporate job or quitting sports or school or whatever that is, because they have something that's calling to them, mm-hmm. What kind of advice or what kind of things were you thinking about at that time that you could maybe like look back and give them a piece of like a framework to think about or like a piece of advice to help them make that decision?
That's a tough question. I guess for me it's just go do something that puts you in the right headspace. Go get outside, go to take a hike, go do something you enjoy and really process it, don't make any ration decisions when you're in a bad headspace, or don't go drink and make a decision, or, you know, anything like that. Just get away from the booze, go 7 days, you know, like really get your mind space right and make a decision.
Yeah.
You know, I think it would go a long ways than kind of just festering on it. Like, get in a peaceful place and think about it and talk to people that you trust and kind of go from there.
Right. I think a lot of people talk about the mountains as being that place for them, especially, you know, growing up in Montana and Idaho. I think that that's a very common thing where people are like, man, I got to get back out there. I got to like go get a little bit of nature or whatever their thing is. Has that always been a place for you that you can like find clarity?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's just a free place. You know, I mean, the cool thing about it is everything out there is, you never know. Everything's unexpected, so you're just going with it. You know, you have zero control when you're in the mountains, and I think that's the most freeing part of it.
Mm-hmm. One of the things that I actually loved about sports, and I've kind of taken it as a theme even after I graduated, is this idea of forced presence. And the idea behind forced presence is that there are a lot of things that are just like constantly on our mind all the time. Like, you've got your job, you've got your relationships, your friendships, your never ending to-do list. Mm-hmm. But there's a select few things that can pull you out of that. And they're the things that, regardless of what you've got going on around you, it forces you to be in the moment right then and there. Before, for me, that was sports, yep. Right? It was like, you've got 2 hours where you have to be at practice, you have to be thinking about this, you've got coaches yelling at you or whatever. And then when I graduated, I realized really quickly that I was like, fuck, I need that time that the rest of the world goes silent, yep. And I can just like be here right mm-hmm. now and not just constantly be like ruminating on all this stuff. And I started training jiu-jitsu a month after playing football, and with all these injuries and stuff like that, still yep. from football, because I was like, I feel like I need that time that's going to take me out of everything.
Yep.
I imagine that forced presence is maybe a good place for somebody to start when they're going through some of those like big decisions. Just like, go do something that's going to force you to be in the moment.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's different too, because it kind of takes you out of that stuff. But I mean, I do a lot of hunting by myself. Mm-hmm. And so, I mean, there's a lot of times where I'm sitting on a ridgetop glassing for hours and hours. And I mean, you're sitting there in your own thoughts. So it also gives you a lot of time to reflect on stuff.
Okay.
You know, like, you can think about your work back home, or where you want to take it from here. Or like, I have some of my best business ideas when I'm out driving around with my hound dogs hunting, you know, because I have nothing else to do but stick my head out, look for tracks, and just think and reflect back on stuff of what I'm doing back home and what I'm doing business-wise, or where I could go from here. And I have some pretty good ideas when I'm just out there by myself. So I enjoy that part of it as well.
What is it about that thing where, like, you know, if you're sitting in your office, sitting down with like no radio on, no podcast, no nothing, it's lit. Like, you're the same person. You can still like do all the thinking and stuff like that. But I'm with you where it seems like the further, I mean, honestly, like physical distance that I have away from my business and my life and everything like that, it seems like there's some version of clarity that comes from literally just like removing yourself out of the day to day. But I'm curious for you, like, what kind of value does that have for you when you're able to just like unplug, and whether you're, you know, scouting or running cats or doing whatever?
Yeah, it's really nice. Especially like this time of year, or like when I'm really in the shop working hard on taxidermy, and it'll drive me nuts just sitting in that shop by myself for days on end working on stuff. And it's hard because it's like, I get home because I have my shop's attached to my house. So I have a shop house, so I work on one side, live on the other, and it's like the work never shuts off when
and
you're
it's
there.
Right there.
Yeah, so it's like I walk out in the shop and I'm just walking out there to get a water out of the fridge or something, and I see it all, and it's like, God, I could do that, or I could do that, or that needs work too, you know. So it's hard for it to ever shut off when you're home.
Okay.
So it's a really nice escape for me just to get out, even if I'm not guiding, just to be like, okay, I'm going hunting for 3 or 4 days, or I'm going shed hunting here, and I just get out, and then I can reflect back on what's going on at home, or what I need to call, or who I need to call for outfitting, or what needs to get done in the shop. And so it's kind of like I get away from it, and then I come back refreshed, and I'm like, okay, now I'm ready to hammer it back out.
Absolutely. I would imagine that once you left playing football and you made all those calls, and you call your buddy and you're like, let's go get up in the mountains. Mm-hmm. I would imagine that was probably one of the biggest moments of like, dude, I got to get the fuck away from all of this real quick and like reflect a little bit.
Absolutely.
What kind of reflections or epiphanies or like thoughts did you have during that trip specifically that kind of like set you on the trajectory for what you're doing now?
Right after that trip, I just wanted more. You know, I just got into this mind space where I was like, I'm just going to take some time, you know, and I'm just going to do a lot of stuff that I like because I haven't done this since, you know, once you start sports when you're fifth, fourth grade, I mean, you don't really get much of it. So I haven't been able to do that stuff since I was young. And so I was like, I'm just going to go hard this fall. And I remember I shot that bear. I came out, called my other buddy. I'm like, let's go back in. And so I pretty much, I spent the whole year in there. I ended up shooting an elk and not finding it. And then I switched over to deer hunting, and I deer hunted the whole year till winter. And then cat hunting hit, and I cat hunted all winter. And then that's kind of when I was like, okay, I got to do something here. I got to go to taxidermy school or figure stuff out and make my next moves.
Was it, did you feel any pressure during that time? Again, like back to like you've got your grandparents with eyes on you, your parents, you've got all this, like you just made this really big shift. Did you feel any pressure at that time to like get a day job or do anything like that to like appease other people? Or were you okay just being like, I'm just going to take this time for me?
I felt like after the fall got over, you know, I kind of felt like, okay, you're kind of just fucking off a lot. Yeah. So when I was going to taxidermy, I did my taxidermy school, and then right after it, I opened the shop, and weirdly I was getting work in, but not enough to pay bills or anything. So I was working part-time with my dad at Yellowstone Boys and Girls Ranch. Okay. Just helping out there. And that's really when I was eye-opening me, because I did that for a while, and I was like, I do not want a 9-to-5 or a day job or any, you know what I mean? So that kind of made me ramp it up. And that's when I was like, okay, I'm going to start guiding because I'm not doing this.
Got you.
And so, yeah, I just kind of got on, and I got on these ads, and there's classified for outfitters in Montana. And I just seen this ad that this guy needed a guide. And so I called him up, and I met him in Roundup at the Busy Bee Cafe and had a meeting with him. And he invited me back up like 2 weeks later and showed me his place. And I started guiding for him, and now I manage their whole outfit pretty much for him.
Holy cow.
So it's pretty crazy how things work like that. And same way with the last guy. I got done guiding my first year in Montana, and I was like, I want to ramp it up. I want more. And found this guy's number online, and I called him, and we bullshitted, and he was like, can you make it up here this sheep season? And I was like, yeah. And he bought me a ticket, and I'd never met the guy, and he picked me up from the airport at 2 a.m. and next thing you know, I'm out in the bush hunting sheep.
That's insane. What does it take, I mean, for you when you answer that classified ad and you're like, okay, well, I know I love hunting. I know I'm good at it. And I just spent an entire season doing it. What does it take to be able to say yes in a moment like that, where I would imagine you don't have like any formal, like official guiding experience or anything like that? Like what allowed you to just say yes and be like, fuck it, I'm just going to throw myself into the fire here?
Yeah, I was extremely nervous. You know, I've never been around guiding. I'd never guided before. I pretty much, and I didn't want to lie to the guy at all and be like, you know what I mean, talk out of my shoes here just to try to get this job. And
such an important lesson when you're young.
Yeah,
dude. Holy cow.
And I've took that with me all through outfitting and guiding. And I tell people straight up, like if the hunting's bad, I'll be like, yeah, it's been rough the last few weeks, you know, but we're going to give it hell and we're going to find something. You know, I'm not going to lie to these people that are spending their hard-earned money to come here.
Right.
But yeah, so I didn't lie to him. I just told him, I was like, I've never guided before. I've never been around it, but I've hunted a lot in my years. And I kind of just told him about the stuff I've done. And he took a chance on me and I took a chance, you know what I mean? Just doing it. And it ended up working out great for us both.
What was it like for you that first trip that you went out? Like what's in your brain? What kind of lessons are you learning?
Pretty funny actually. So I had these two guys come in from California that I'm like really good friends with now. They were my first clients, and this was their first hunting trip ever.
Ooh,
so
perfect.
It worked out great. Yeah. And I remember we're going out in the dark. It's like 4:30 in the morning, 5 a.m. And it's dark, and I've only been up this road once to this guy's property. And I took the wrong road, and I just end up in this guy's driveway in their cul-de-sac.
Oh no.
And I'm like, shoot.
Wrong house.
Yeah, wrong house. Totally wrong place. Not even close. And I'm like trying to play it off as best I can. I'm looking at my maps on my phone. I'm like, oh yeah, we're just going to go hunt over here, I think, today. And I pull out and drive like 20 minutes somewhere else. But yeah, I mean, I just winged it, man. You know, I didn't really know the ranch that well. I was kind of just hunting. You know, I just took everything that I've learned from my experience in the past and put it into that first week and just figured it out. So we ended up shooting 2 nice deer, and they had thought it was the coolest thing ever. So I was like, maybe I can do this, you know? And then it kind of funneled in, and I had about 5 or 6 more hunts that year that I ended up filling everybody out on. And I was like, okay, I can make this work. And that's when I was like, let's try Alaska.
I feel like that's such a huge jump to go from like, okay, I had 5 or 6 successful ones. Let's go to like one of the most premier hunting places in the
I don't
world.
know what I was thinking. At that point I was so hungry and I just wanted to go do some crazy stuff. And it's kind of the same with commercial fishing. Like I just got a phone call. My sister went to college with these people from Pullman, and their family was just generational commercial fishermen. And he'd asked me once and I was like, no way, dude. I've never even been on the ocean really. And they asked me again, and I was just in that mindset where like, let's do it.
And had you been to Alaska at this point?
No, so I did that in the same year. So I left in June, went up commercial fished through June, July, came home, had a few weeks, and then I went straight back to Alaska for sheep and moose season.
Wow. And that was after, so you had like the fall and everything like that where you were running, you started outfitting.
That was when I just started guiding.
When you just started guiding.
So you have to guide you have to have 100 some days. I think it's like 4 years.
Got it.
You have to guide before you can take your outfitter's test.
Got you. Holy cow. So that's a big year then.
Yeah. So then, so I did that fall, worked on my taxidermy, tried to build that up in the winter. And then that spring, I was still kind of working out, but I was still doing the Yellowstone Boys and Girls Ranch just because it wasn't, that was my first year. I wasn't going enough for that.
Right.
And that's kind of, I think the Yellowstone Boys and Girls Ranch, working there, doing like a regular 9 to 5 or just like a job like that is what pushed me to want to go do all this other crazy stuff too.
That's interesting.
Yeah, and I just knew that's not what I wanted. It wasn't nothing against that place, or I didn't want to do that anywhere.
Right.
And so I was like, yeah, let's try this commercial fishing thing, and it was wild.
Yeah, what's it like? What's it like?
You live on a boat with 3 other guys, so your captain and 2 other crewmates, and
fairly small boat, I'd imagine.
Yeah, they can only be 33 feet long, is the max, and it's the biggest salmon run in the world in Bristol Bay. I mean, there's thousands of boats out there, and it's really competitive. And so they open it up. At the beginning, it'll be like you can either fish 16 or 18 hours a day.
Wow.
And so, I mean, and it's just like snap, snap. You're trying to load down as much fish as you can to take it to the tenders, to offload in those. And so then it takes about an hour to offload your fish, and the tenders are giant ships that are out there.
Okay.
And they'll come down with cranes, and they'll offload all your fish, and they'll put it on there, and they'll show you your weight for the day. So you can kind of see what you make a day, which is kind of cool. So it kind of keeps you fishing harder.
Right.
But by the time you offload your fish and you get back and you scrub the boat down and clean everything and get the nets right, you got about an hour and a half of sleep, and then you're next.
And how long are you out there?
The first year I came for like the hot run. And so it's like the guys that are out there the whole year, it's about 2 months.
Wow.
I think I did like 25 days my first year.
Dude.
And you just live on a boat, and it's like you're camping on a boat.
What was it like learning?
It was kind of intense because it's pretty dangerous. I mean, it's not like just a walk in the park. So my first year, it was a lot of like staying the fuck out of the way of, you know what I mean, when shit was going hot.
Yeah. So
it was cool learning all that and just trying not to get killed on the boat.
Yeah, seriously. What are the things about like that lifestyle? Because my stepdad commercial fished for a season, and hearing some of his stories, I'm like, what the fuck? Like, I understand why people get paid so well to do it.
Right.
What are some of the things that people don't understand about that lifestyle?
It's not glamorous. People are really crabby all the time, it seems like.
Yeah.
But it's a pretty like close niche, like I would say it's like a really tight family. Like we had a fleet of boats that we were all in the same radio system, and it was probably like 12 different boats, and it'd be like if they're into fish, they would call us, and we'd go over there. And so it was really cool to seeing like people work together and catch fish.
Right.
But yeah, it's pretty intense stuff.
I bet. So you're sleeping an hour and a half. I'd imagine that the water isn't always great every day. Like you're probably not always fishing in the best conditions.
No, and that was the hardest part for me because I wasn't used to, like, the guys I'm fishing with, they're like your dad. They commercial fish their whole life, and stuff like that. And I wasn't, like, we'd get into 10, 8-foot swells, and the boats are rocking, and you're trying to pick fish and work.
Especially on a 33-foot boat.
Yeah,
that's not a big boat.
No, it's really moving. Yeah. And so the hardest part for me was just not puking when you're working.
Yeah.
And my second year, I got really, really sick, and it was pretty rough for a while.
I feel like that's also kind of like I don't know if claustrophobic is like the right word, but when you know that you can't get off the boat and you're sick as shit. Like we went and did a like catamaran. We sailed for like 4 days or something like that in Belize not too long ago.
Yep.
And even the times that we got outside of the wave or outside of the reef and all that, and we did a couple crossings, same kind of thing. There were like, 8-foot waves or whatever. And the boat's like, it's a rodeo for sure. But I got to thinking about it. I was like, to think that this is your reality and you can't get out of it for another like 3 weeks. I feel like that'd be like a very trapping feeling.
Yeah, it was a terrible feeling. Yeah, it was not good. I remember one time I was hanging over the boat and I was puking like uncontrollably. And the boat was rocking so bad I was hanging over, and I remember I would come down and my nose would about touch the water on the side, and then I'd come up and all I'd see was sky, and it was like sky down, you about touch the water, and I just did that for hours and puked, and it was just like you had nowhere to go.
Brutal.
Yeah.
So when you get back from that season, you've been there for 25 days and like probably getting thrown into the fire a little bit. What did you walk away from that, like thinking, learning, or like how did that motivate you to either go back or just like really go in on the other stuff that you were doing?
Yeah, I think it was just a good learning experience to just be in a different environment and just be somewhere where you're very, very uncomfortable.
Right.
You know, it kind of helped with like going and guiding in Alaska and you'd be like, this ain't shit. I've been on the ocean where you think you're going to die. Yeah. You know what I mean? Yeah. Like I got my feet on the ground. We're good, you know? So it definitely helped in that perspective for sure. Just getting very uncomfortable and just doing something that you have no idea about. You know, I got on the first year I got on the boat with the idea that we were going to come back to land every day.
Oh shit.
Yeah. So when I got on there and realized, once I got there, I got onto a tender and it's about an 18-hour boat ride out to the fishing grounds. And I was like, yeah, we ain't coming back every day.
Yeah, no, not a chance. We're not coming back every week.
That was like, oh, okay, we're out here for it. So yeah, it just put myself in very, very uncomfortable situations, and it helped for sure in the long run. Yeah,
we were talking a little bit off mic, and you said that part of the reason that you said yes to doing that was just to like go do something hard, go do something crazy. What was like the specific draw about it outside of the money that was like something that allowed you to say yes to doing that experience?
And to me, honestly, I don't even feel like I did it for the money. Like the money's good doing it, but I just felt like I just wanted to go do something wild. And like I just thought like commercial fishing sounds badass. Let's go do it. And so that's really what it was for me. Like I wasn't there to get rich or like it really wasn't a money draw for me. It was more just like I want to go try this.
Do you think that that's what allowed you to pull through some of the really hard stuff? It was like I asked for this?
Yeah, pretty much. Yeah. It's just you put yourself in this situation.
Exactly.
Right. But yeah, I learned after my second year pretty quick that I was like, I'm not a commercial fisherman, and I'd rather just maybe go do some more cool hunting stuff.
Yeah, exactly. So tell me a little bit. You kind of started getting down at about going to Alaska and essentially getting a plane ticket and being like, okay, well, we're here now. It's still in year one. What was that first trip like?
The first trip was cool. Like it was just like everything was just you know what I mean? I felt like a little kid going to like the coolest amusement park ever. Like when I showed up out there, I was just like, felt like I was on a different planet. But yeah, I made the phone call and he hired me right there as an assistant. So basically you're a glorified packer. You're just an assistant to the main guide because you have to be an assistant up there for 60 days in the field before you can get a guide license. Okay. So I was just going up to learn, basically. And the guy knew I had a bunch of hunting experience and stuff, so he was pretty keen on me coming up. But yeah, he picked me up from the airport at 2 a.m. And I remember he was late because he was sleeping, and I was sitting out there with all my gear like, what did I get myself into? Yeah. And he picked me up, and super cool guy right away. And 2 days later, we show up at this little, yes, I'm trying to get the right word, but we show up at the airport, you could call it, but they're tiny little airports. Right. It's just a little airstrip that you use to get people into the bush. Okay. And he goes, I'm going to go drop you off out here. This guy, Cole, is our pilot. He's like, Cole's going to go drop you off out here. I'll be in 5 days with the client. He goes, just go do some scouting around, whatever you want to do. And I was like, all right.
And he's telling you this on the spot. You didn't know when you were going to Alaska that you'd be out there for 5 days by yourself?
No idea. He's just telling me this when I showed up. And I'm just fully trusting this guy. And I'm like, okay. And so Cole drops me out there, and he drops me off on, like, it's not even, I think he's the only guy that's ever landed there right now. It's like this tiny little runway on the side of a mountain that comes down. It just flattens off barely, and then it goes straight down into this mountain. And he lands right there and drops me off. And then I remember just watching him fly away, like, off out of this valley. I mean, I'm probably 100 miles from town. It's about 2 hour plane ride, maybe about an hour and a half in a Cub. And he flies away, and I'm like, man, I hope they come back. You know what I mean? Yeah. Like, I have no idea. I don't know. I couldn't walk out.
Just met these dudes.
Yeah, I was like, I hope they come back. And, I hiked around for 5 days in Alaska. I've seen bears and moose and sheep. And yeah, I just spent 5 days by myself out there just kind of messing around. And then they showed back up and we started our sheep hunt.
We were talking earlier in this podcast about like the thinking that you do when you're in that. And like you had just come from commercial fishing, from your first year guiding and doing all that kind of stuff. Like what's going through your mind when you're 5 days in Alaska with like no context?
I think I was still riding that high of just coming out and doing crazy stuff. And I was like, at that point, I was just loving it. You know, I wanted to climb that mountain. I'd look over in that valley. I was like, I wonder how hard it could be to get up there, you know?
Yeah.
I was just eating all of it up at that point. I wanted more and more and more. And so at that point, I was still just gun-ho as all could be. I was just grinning ear to ear standing out there.
Honeymoon face.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
That's awesome. I think it's really cool when you're in any kind of like business or creative thing that you're doing. I think that it's really important to have moments that feel like huge wins relatively early.
Yeah.
Wins where it's like you get into your thing and you're like, I think I want to be a guide, or I think I want to be an outfitter eventually, or I think I want blah, blah, blah. And you can see that dream, but you don't have the proof yet. I think that there are certain moments, like with this podcast even, one of the first things that we did was we got to do a trip to Sheridan, and we got to record a couple of episodes with dudes that I like look up to creatively and in a business mind and stuff like that before we ever even launched. And, one of my dreams for the show is to be able to travel for it and to be able to like drop into a city and record with like people that I've never met and who I like aspire to be like and I'm interested in. And even though it was only a 2-hour drive, we got to do like exactly what my like end vision for the thing was. And I remember leaving that weekend, and while it was fun and all of that kind of stuff, my biggest takeaway from it was I was like, holy shit, this is possible. And I think it's so important for people to have those moments early where it's like you get a little bit of that win or you get a little bit of that end vision to be like, no, dude, this is like, you can do this.
Yeah, absolutely.
Was that moment being in Alaska kind of like that for you?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, it's just those moments that, like I said earlier, it's just like it gives you that like reflection of like, this is what I'm supposed to be doing, you know, like going to Sheridan and everything working out perfectly. You're like, you had that moment where like, I'm supposed to be here, you know?
Yeah.
And just looking around Alaska, it was just like, I mean, at my first sheep hunt, it didn't go as planned, you know what I mean? And so that was like, is this how it's going to be? You know? So that was kind of hard. We had a guy come in and he got a lot of what happens in Alaska is these guys fly in here and they have no idea what they're getting themselves into. Okay. And they get really overwhelmed when that plane flies away.
Right.
And so,
probably.
Yeah, they do. It's like it hits them hard. It can go either one or two ways. They're going to be like, this is fucking awesome. Or they're going to be like, get me the hell out of here.
Do you guys, like, now that you've seen that enough times, do you guys just, like, sit around, like, looking out the corner of your eye being like, all right, which one's it going to be?
Yeah, I mean, you can tell within the first, some guys surprise you, you know what I mean? They kind of show up and they're like, yes, and they'll pull out of it and you give them a lot of props, you know, because it's a lot of mental toughness to kind of make it out there in the conditions and all that stuff. But you can kind of see it right away when people roll in, you're like, ooh, this might not go the distance here. But yeah, my first sheep hunt, the guy, he was freaked out about walking on steep terrain with this heavy pack on. Because, like, we load up for 12 days and from the airstrip and we just go and we backpack and we go find sheep. And it's straight up and down. Like, you know, I mean, I'm sure you've heard of Cameron Haynes and his buddy Roy Roth. I mean, if you fall in that country, I mean, with a big pack on, you're going to roll down to your death probably. And so this guy was real wigged out about walking through the cliffs and stuff with his pack. And so I remember my first sheep hunt, I would take my pack and I would just march way ahead of everybody and get it way up there, and I'd drop my pack off, and then I'd go hauling ass back and I'd grab his pack.
Wow.
And I would carry his pack through a lot of the stuff because he was too scared to carry it. And it was like 3 days I leapfrogged my pack and this guy's pack, and we finally got into sheep country, and he was like, this is as far as I'm going to make it. And we found it was a sublegal ram. It was right there. You got to shoot him off age or full curl, and I think this ram was 7 and not quite full curl. Okay. And so we sat on a ram, and he didn't shoot it, but he didn't really get a push to his full limits of like getting into sheep country because of his limitations of being afraid of walking through steep stuff.
Gotcha.
And so we kind of pulled out that next one, and then I had a next sheep guy fly in, and it was the way it was supposed to be.
How'd that next one go?
Oh, it was awesome. We hammered a giant ram.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, we packed up and we hit it, and we just hit the sheep country and hunted the way you're supposed to. And I was like, yeah, this is awesome.
So what was so you get dropped off for those 5 days. Your guys come back that you're being an assistant with. How does that hunt go? Is that one of the?
That was the one we
hunts?
leapfrogged. Yep.
Gotcha.
That was the first sheep hunt, and then we flew to a different area for the next one, and we got dropped off in there and backpacked up into air, and I think we killed a really nice ram on day 3.
Okay.
And so we got it back to the runway, and we called the pilot, and he was coming in to pick up the meat and take that guy out, but he was bringing our moose client in early.
Oh, damn.
And I remember.
So you're still out there.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
They just bring you in new clients. You stay out in the field the whole time, and so they just shuttle you in new people.
So you're out for 12 days, or the guys who are on like these hunts, they're out for 12 days?
That was his hunt, 12-day hunt. So then I'd have another guy come in for another 12-day hunt.
So you might be out there for a month.
Yeah, usually I spend about 30 days out there straight. Yeah, just living off dry freeze and drinking creek water. It's pretty fun, actually. You get into that was my favorite part, is about after the first hunt, you get so used to it and your body starts feeling so good, and like you haven't had alcohol, you haven't had, I mean, I have a lot of Zins on me out there, but
Yeah.
you haven't alcohol, and you get in this, like, you feel unkillable. You know what I mean? You get into this mind space where, like, I am rocking shit out here. And that was the best part for me. And then it was almost weird leaving after 30 days, because then you come back to society, your phone, and you got all that, and you would almost get the blues coming out, you know, after being so away from everything, and then you come back and you're in an airport and things are crazy, and you're like, God, I just want to be back out there. And so it takes a while to get back into things. But the best part for me is I would leave no days in between. So the 2 years I did that, I would fly back from Alaska, and I remember I think the first year I had about 8 hours at home before I had to bomb up to my place in Montana.
Gotcha.
And then the next year was like, I think I had like 18 hours before my next turnaround clients.
Okay. And you do that intentionally to kind of like help like come down from that high being in Alaska?
I was doing that to stay in Alaska as long as I could.
Yeah.
I was just pushing, and then I would always get down and I'd have 3 days, and I'd be like, God, I hope a storm doesn't roll in or I ain't getting out of here. Right. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And so I was just pushing the max as I could and just not wanting to be at home.
How do you deal with that? I mean, outside of booking stuff for you to do right when you get back home, how do you deal with that come down?
It's hard. Like this time of year is hard for me because I'm not, it's bear season just ended, turkey season just ended, and now I'm just stuck in the shop. I can go take hikes, and this is kind of when I get almost the blues of like, man, I just need hunting season.
You get like the opposite of winter blues.
Yeah, exactly. Because fall through spring, I can hunt whenever I want anything, not anything, but there's always something to hunt. And so now this time of year where it's like, I guess we can go fishing.
That's kind of a trip, man.
But it's fun because here in about a month or two, like I get to start like scouting pretty hard in July and August and setting up cameras and tree stands and getting ready for the fall stuff. So that helps a lot. But this June is pretty boring.
Yeah, I gotcha. How do you start to prep when you're in like your off season, if you will? What are the things that you start to do outside of building tree stands and like setting up the actual hunt part? What do you do to prepare yourself, whether it's mentally or physically, for like the crazy seasons that you have coming up?
I just spend a lot of time in the gym, really. Mm-hmm. That's kind of when I can't go out to the mountains or I can't go hunting or something like that, that's kind of my little escape. I go there and at least just get to work my body out and kind of get some motion going. That helps a lot. But mentally, I just you want to go into it like prepared. You want all your clients that you're on the phone with talking to, make sure they know what's going on. You don't want any just like crazy loopholes to go through when it does come down to it where you got to figure stuff out last second. So I guess just prepping everything, like, there's a lot more that goes into it than just show up at hunting. You got to like prep food, you got to get enough meals and think about what you're going to cook and the cost effective stuff, or you don't want to be feeding everybody ribeyes 2 nights a week, and just kind of plan all that stuff out to where it's like, how can I make this a good camp, a comfortable camp without spending a fortune on it? Right.
I would imagine that going from like hunting a ton yourself and hunting with your buddies, where people are kind of like, for the most part, taking care of each other and taking care of yourselves. It's like, you don't really have to be a leader in that position. I'd imagine that it's a huge change when it's like everything's riding on you. People are counting on you for like the hunt going well, for being able to feed them, being able to find shelter, all that kind of stuff. How did you have to or how have you had to grow as a leader as you've continued to do this stuff?
When shit hits the fan, they look at you. You know what I mean? And if you look at them and you're just like, well, I don't know. You know what I mean? If you just give them an answer and just stick to it and just make a plan and do it, they'll respect that a lot more than you just like hemming and hawing about it.
Right.
So, I mean, most of these guys that are out here, they're hiring you to do it, or they want to come with you because they want a good experience and they don't want to have to take all that role on. Yeah. If that makes sense.
Yeah.
And so for you to be like a strong person about it and just be like, yeah, we're getting shitty weather. We're going to go hunker down here in these trees and we're going to have to wait it out, man. Yeah. And it's probably going to suck, but there's really not much else we can do, and we're not going to bitch about it.
Right.
But yeah, you just, honestly, I just make a decision. I mean, I heard one of your podcasts earlier, and someone said, just make a decision, make it the right one. And I really liked that. And I was like, that's going to stick with me for sure.
Yeah. That one hit me really hard too, because it was, it was funny. I got given that advice by a 19-year-old who had been given that advice by his mom.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, and I was like, okay, I guess if it's coming from a mom, it's probably good advice.
Yeah, they have the best advice.
Oh, always. But that one's been really, really good for me, because I tend to be somebody who's like an analysis paralysis person. And so when I hear stories like yours where it's like, I made this decision that was really hard to quit football, but then right away it's like, I went to this hunt, I made a snap decision to hit a black bear, and then a couple of weeks later I just like responded to some ad, and then I was in Alaska. That's so inspiring to me, because I tend to be somebody who each of those decisions in different points of my life would have taken me a couple months or a year to be like, okay, well, I got to get a lot of hunts under my belt before I try to go guide something.
Yeah.
Or
absolutely.
I got to do blah, blah, blah before I go to like, I got to spend 3 years guiding before I try to go to Alaska. And that whole like make a decision and make it the right one thing, I think that it resonates with me so much, because I almost always need to hear that advice.
Yeah.
Like, just get the fuck out of your own way, dude.
Mm-hmm. Oh yeah, I battle that all the time. Like, the hardest part with me sometimes with this is like, I hate like calling people that I don't know, you know what I mean? And pitching like a business thing. And so like like the other day I was trying to work on this ranch lease for months, and like this lady, she's kind of a private lady, and I didn't really want to bug her too much, and I was just really nervous about calling her, because a lot of times you call these people, because you call them, and basically how it works is you want to lease their ranch out for the hunting rights, so then you can bring clients in there.
Yep.
And it works out for them because somebody looks over their ranch. There's no BS going on it. But, I mean, you can call 50 random ranch owners and plead your case to them, and 48 of them are going to tell you to kick rocks.
Right.
You know what I mean? They don't know you. They don't know me from Adam Apple, and I just call them and they're like, who is this guy? Who wants to come onto my ranch? You know what I mean? So that part of it's hard, and I get real nervous about it. But I've just been festering me for weeks. I got to call this lady. And I call her, and it just went perfect to T. She's a super sweet lady. It worked out. We made a deal, and it was just like, why was that bothering me so much? Why couldn't I just call her the day I wanted to, So I totally get that.
I think that there's anytime that you're doing something that you love, it's tricky, because a lot of times it comes with something that you don't love about it.
Yep.
Right. And whether you're a painter who like you love painting, but you hate dealing with accounting or with dealing with galleries, or like whatever the thing is, I think that there's always something that comes when you take your passion and turn it into a business, that it's just like, fuck, I really don't like doing this other part.
Yeah.
I'm curious for you though, like once you decided to take this thing that was your passion and your escape and all these different things and turn that into a career where you're making big decisions on this thing, how did that change your relationship with hunting and like the passion that you had for it?
Yeah, so that's actually a good question. So like after my second year commercial fishing, and then I did the same thing straight into Alaska, and I remember I was kind of really burned out. Like I went back to Montana and I got through the season, and I had an elk tag in my pocket, and I had 2 weeks off, like from hunting, before I had to go do my own, or I go back to guiding rifle hunts. And I had a good elk tag in my pocket. And I remember I went out there, and I got up and I got camp set up, and I went out hunting one day, and I got back to camp, and I was like, I do not want to be here.
Really?
Yeah, like it was hard. I did not want to be there at all. Like I didn't want, like when I had a day off, I just didn't even want to think about hunting at that point. So I almost went too hard for the time period where I just burned myself out. And so it was hard for me. And then I didn't even hardly want to hunt with my dogs that winter. And I was so burned out of hunting that I was like, I can't continue this, because I'm going to lose the thing that I loved from the beginning. And so that was kind of a big turning point for me not to go back to Alaska.
Got you.
And so I was like, well, I have to make some decisions. Like I can't keep doing this. And so I chose not to go back to Alaska. And that's when I was like, I think I really want to ramp up this Montana thing and kind of really get things going here in Montana. And just because I know, because if I split time like that, I can't do it, you know?
Right.
But I was like, I think I can do this Montana thing and kind of maybe one day build my own. And I'm still just guiding at this point. I hadn't even thought about getting my outfitter's license.
Right.
And so I quit going to Alaska that year. And then I kind of went back and I kind of just reflected on like, I just need to get back into hunting and like, you know what I mean, enjoy it again for myself.
Right.
And we kind of had a weird draw that year for archery elk, and I only had, I think, 4 weeks. So I had 2 weeks off, and I went out and I was like, I'm just going to hunt for myself and just kind of like learn to love it again.
Yeah.
And I went out that year and I shot the biggest bull I've ever killed, and I fell in love. Like it's exactly what I needed, was just like, because I didn't hunt, you know, I mean, I was itching hard from not going to Alaska because I was like, I hadn't, you know, usually I'd already been hunting for 2 months, you know,
right.
And so I got my guiding in and it went good, and I was still really hungry at that point for hunting. And so I went out and got my own hunting, and I was like, oh, that felt really good.
Interesting. Was it, when you first set out on that hunt, did you have to remind yourself at all that like, even if it's hard at the beginning because I don't want to be here, whatever the thing is, like, did you have to remind yourself at all on that hunt that like, the reason that I'm doing this is to fall back in love with it?
Yeah, absolutely. And it made it, I think the best part about it is my buddy had the same tag.
Okay.
And his brother did. And he kind of had a ranch close. We were hunting public land, but he had a ranch close. So we would all kind of stay together. And it was like old times. Like it was supposed to be. When we went out, he shot a bull, his brother shot a bull, and then I ended up shooting one. And it was just like an awesome trip. Yeah. And it kind of just helped me. I was like, yeah, this is why I fell in love with it.
Gotcha.
And I think it was just, I was doing too much, you know, the commercial fishing to Alaska and then to the Montana, to where it's like, you got to the point where it's like, I do not want to go hunting right now. Uh-huh. So I think cutting back a little bit and then just kind of going all in on Montana kind of helped me a lot with falling back in love with it. But now I kind of look at it, it's totally different for me to go out and hunt on my own than it is to take clients now. Okay. Like I hunt totally different, you know, than I do without clients. And it's just, now it's peaceful, you know, There's no pressure. Now when I take people out, you know, you got that pressure of to where these guys paid good money to come out here and do this. Let's make this a great experience, to where I can just go out, and if I wanted to carry a 6-pack of beer up to the top of the ridge and drink it and go bow hunting, I will, you know? So it's good for me now. It just gives me peace and clarity to go out by myself.
Yeah. I think it's really important for people that do their passion as their profession to have some kind of outlet, whether it's like a different version of their same thing. Like for you, it's still hunting, but it's an entirely different setup than if you're guiding and doing all that kind of stuff. I also think too, having something that's like still a creative pursuit that you have a passion for, that you make time for, that isn't your main thing, right? Like if I can, like podcasting is obviously like, I still very much love it. Like I think it's the coolest job in the world. But that being said, they're like looking at people like Chris Williamson, who's releasing 3 episodes a week and traveling all over and stuff. Like there is some extra bullshit that comes with being one of the top in the game for it. And one of the things I've tried to be mindful about is like, I hear all of these stories of people in creative pursuits who do burn out, because it's like the thing that I love doing is now the thing that's like suffocating me.
Yep, forcing you to do it.
Yeah, and I think that finding little things, whether it's like a podcaster who also has like a drawing hobby or jiu-jitsu or boxing, or like finding something that's outside of your thing so that you can like kind of like hit that reset button, seems like it's really important.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, you got to have something that'll clear you away from it, but yeah, you don't want to lose what you fell in love with either. For sure. So it's like that heavy balance where like, okay, where if I'm doing it now, I can push it aside and make it more business, you know, and then I can, when I go out and do it for my pleasure, I can just release and just be myself.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah, absolutely. So now that, walk me through a little bit, now that we've got like a pretty decent story of you just like full sending it into like exactly what you're doing. Once you made that decision to like pull back a little bit, focus on Montana, and maybe start to focus a little bit more on that, like the business side of things and figuring out how you can not be burnt out. What are some of the decisions and some of the things that you've done since that moment and that shift?
That kind of made me realize that I could do it here in Montana.
Yeah, I guess. Like once you decided to be in Montana and to be like, okay, I'm going to focus on this business in Montana or whatever. Like how have things changed for you since then?
It's actually been pretty crazy, because that year I decided, you know, I wasn't sure yet if I wanted, you know, the outfitter thing, I was like, yeah, eventually, you know, I don't want to be a guide my whole life, you know, but I wasn't sure like how quick I wanted to come onto it. Okay. And then I like, I felt like I wasn't ready. If that makes sense, like you were saying, like I needed to guide longer before I felt like I was ready to do that.
Okay.
And then I remember my last year in Alaska, I got an inReach message on the satellite phone. And the guy that kind of mentored me from the start that I called for the Montana, his name's Mark Robbins. And he pretty much has taught me everything I kind of need to know. And not need to know, but everything that I do know, I wish he could teach me a lot more.
Yeah.
But I got an inReach from him that's saying that he got diagnosed with brain cancer.
While you're out?
While I'm out in Alaska,
Wow.
yeah. And they're telling me that they're not going to be around, that my outfitter at the moment, he's like, we're not going to be around at all this fall because we got chemo treatments in Houston. And so they're basically like, we need you to man the ship of the whole outfit this fall. And I was like, that was a lot for me to take in right there at the moment.
And this is the Alaska outfit or the
No, this is the
Montana
Montana.
outfit?
This is when I was in Alaska working, about to go back. And like it was easy for me. I show up, the boss was there, I just showed up and guided.
Yeah.
And so they hit me with that, and I was like, holy cow, this is actually going to be a lot this fall. It was kind of just like, I need to kind of get ready for this. And so we went out, and I was extremely nervous. I was basically the outfitter of the camp there that first fall. And we ended up going 10 for 10 archery that year, and it was like the most epic elk hunting I've ever seen out there.
Yeah.
And that was at that moment, and it was not like, oh, I can be an outfitter, I can do this. It was more like, it was like one of those moments like, this is where I'm supposed, you know what I mean? Everything was just lining up so perfect, and they were, you could tell that they were stressed out, that they were not there, and like everything went so smoothly. And we never went 100% before in archery, and we did that year. And it was just like crazy, that it all worked out like that. And so that's when I was like, well, maybe, I can do this. And so then the next year I guided again, and I was like, I'm going to get my outfitter's license. And I had no leads, I didn't have anybody that was going to hand anything over. I didn't have I had nowhere to hunt. I had my place in Hysham to go antelope hunting, and that was it. And so I was like, I'm just going to do it. I can at least get my license, and I can build off of it.
Right.
And then my boss ended up getting really sick, and he passed away this spring. He ended up finally passing away, and he battled it hard for 3 years, really strong brain cancer. And so that was really eye-opening for me, because I knew that like I could do it, but it was hard because I needed him there to kind of like help me.
Right.
And he even told me from the beginning, he's like, I don't want to be an outfitter, for the rest of my life. He's like, I've been thinking about getting out of it times, but he's like, I would love to help you get into it,
Wow.
And so they've helped me, like, they're basically my family now. I treat them like family. And so they're a big reason why I could get started.
Okay.
And so they've helped me get going through with like permits and all that stuff. And so kind of like my agreement with them is like, we kind of double team their outfit now that I help manage it. And then I have my own. So then I help book their stuff, and then I book my stuff around theirs. So
Gotcha.
It worked out pretty good.
Yeah. It sounds like you've had a lot of good mentors, whether it was the people who helped you in Alaska and Montana. What kind of benefit or like what kind of importance do you think that mentors have in people's lives when they're like setting out on their own?
I think you got to have them. I think it's really hard to do it without them, honestly. Like this year I went and saw this ranch, and I went and toured it, and like I had to make a price on it to what I was going to offer them.
Yeah.
And I remember this whole time in my head, I was like, I just wish I could call Mark and be like, what would you know what I mean? What do you think?
Right.
So that part's really hard, not having someone like that. And they make you help rational decisions, even if it's not what you want to hear. And that's the best part of having them. I've been told I've had these great ideas, and I call a mentor or a guy that I trust, and he'd be like, you're a fucking idiot. You know what I mean? And sometimes you need to hear that. Sometimes you need to be like, no, do not do that.
Right.
So I think it just getting another perspective of someone who's been there and done that before goes a long, long ways.
For sure. It seems like that's one of the main like themes, I guess, that I hear from a lot of people is like they do enough things and they say yes to enough things on their own where they end up in experiences where they meet those mentors. Mm-hmm. Right. But I think that it does take a little bit from us to like, you have to show up in a good way where a mentor is willing to look at you and be like, I want to help you.
Yeah.
And I think that a lot of the things that you did with like, on a short notice, going out to Alaska or deciding to say yes to commercial fishing or being like, fuck it, I'm done playing football, I'm going to like go do this thing.
Yeah.
I think that it's important to be able to find those mentors to actually like do the things that would make you a good person to mentor. Mm-hmm. And I'm curious kind of if you've got any insights on that is like, what does it take to actually find a good mentor, and like what's the person that you have to be for somebody to be like, okay, I'm going to help you?
Yeah. Just someone that you've spent enough time around that you can trust opening up to. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? You gotta. Some of the like mentors that I've like look up to the most, we've been in some shitty situations, and he's just cool, calm, cool as a cucumber. They've been there, and it's just like you can see it on their face. Like they don't panic, they don't make irrational decisions. Like you get in a shithole, and he's like, well, we're going to do this, and this is how it's going to go.
Right.
And it's just people that you can trust in really bad situations. It's kind of the way I look at it. Like, okay. I don't like to hunt with people that I can't trust who's not going to have my back. You know what I mean?
Right.
Just stuff like that to where it's like, I know if we got in a really, really bad spot, this guy's got me and I got him. Gotcha. So just people like that you can trust opening up to and be yourself with is really.
Yeah, I think that's cool to think about. Like, also, like, as a mentee, having like a set of filters for like who you're going to let mentor you.
Yeah, for sure.
That seems like a tricky thing because especially now that, everybody's got a course, everybody's got advice to give on social media and all that kind of stuff. It's really hard for me to like filter through that noise sometimes. And I think that's a cool way to do it, is be like, okay, well, I'm not going to like take your advice, or I'm not going to let you mentor me until we go through some shit together.
Yeah, exactly. Like, and I have a totally different mentor for taxidermy. Like the guy that taught me, he's like one of my best friends now, and I'll get into a pinch where I was like, I have no idea, like this thing will not work. Like it will not go together. And I'll call him and he'll be like, do this, this, and this. And you know what I mean? And me and him have done he's been to Alaska with me. We've done some cool trips together. I mean, he would run into a fire for me and save me. And so it's just cool having people like that to have your back to you, or you just know like they got you.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm really curious, especially I feel like the story that we've got from you, like essentially starting from fuck it, I'm done playing football, to like creating your own business and doing all this stuff is super cool. I want to hear about some of the highlight moments throughout your career of like, obviously the one with the black bear is huge. Mm-hmm. But it seems like there have been a lot of these moments where you find yourself in the right place at the right time, taking a risk, and the world comes to you and is like, here, bro, you're on the right path.
Yeah.
What are some of those other moments that you've had, whether it's like cool hunting moments that you've had or conversations you've had with people that have like been a lot of those signs that like, dude, you're doing the right thing?
Yeah, there's a few hunts that I really look back on. Like this spring, I had a guy come in not a guy, I was actually helping out my buddy's outfit, but he came in for his turkey hunt. And right when I talked to him on the phone, I could tell like something was up in his voice, and he shows up and he's on an oxygen tank, and it's like, you could tell like he was going for his Grand Slam, which is I'm not a turkey guy, so don't quote me, but I think there's 4 turkeys in the United States. I think there's 5, but one's not on it.
Okay.
But it's called the Slam, and you got to kind of travel around the states to get them all. And it's a big deal to some of these guys, a really big deal. And so he came in going for a Slam. And it was pretty cool because I'd walk him into the blind, and he's on his oxygen tank, and he would hook it up to it, and we'd be sitting in the blind. I'd be turkey calling, and you'd hear his oxygen tank working over there. And it honestly, it just made me smile, like ear to ear. It was just cool because you knew, like, not that it was his last hunt, but it's probably on the top end of his last hunts. You know what I mean?
Right.
And just to watch him shoot his turkey and get his Slam, and he about started crying there on the spot. It just, you get to do some really cool stuff and have some cool experiences that are just way above you. You know what I mean? Way above you. And then there's just like this last fall, I did an elk hunt, and had these 3 cousins, and they wanted to hunt together. And I'm like, we got to kill 3 elk in 6 days.
This is a tall order, boys.
Yeah. I'm like, you realize this? And they're like, no, we trust you, because I'd hunted with the guy before. And he's like, we really trust you, and we'd really like to hunt together. And I was like, okay. And I knew we only had 6 days, and so we were on day 2. We hadn't killed an elk yet, and I was kind of feeling it. But I was just trying to stay, like, positive, and these guys are really cool guys. And that evening, we killed a nice bull, and then the next day, we went out, and I got lucky. We killed another one. So then I had 2 down, and I had 2 days left.
Yeah.
And we got into the last hunt, and the guy told me, he goes, my daughter has a volleyball game tonight. I'm not hunting this evening. And so then we woke up that morning, and I was like, okay, I got 1 morning to get this done. And so I took him into a spot where we knew some elk were hanging out, and we hiked all the way in there. And this guy, he was like, I'm okay going home without like a big bull. He's like, I'd like to shoot a really good one. And I was like, okay, yeah, like as long as you're okay with it, let's hammer it out.
Yeah.
So we get in there and we're picking through these elk, and there's a few good bulls, and I'm kind of looking at him like, let's do it. Yeah. And he was like, no, it's not big enough. And I'm like, okay, no, like totally cool with me. Like you said, you're okay with it. And we push down one more ridge and come up, and I glass this one bull up, and it looks like the same bull we already seen. And I kind of look at him, and he was like, no. And I was like, all right. And out of nowhere, dude, this bull steps out of the timber or out of this cut, and it walks up, and it's just this giant bull. And I look at him, and he looks at me, and he's just like giving me the nod, yes. And right there, I mean, we were about to leave, you know, and he gets down on the ground and shoots that bull, and it's just his dream bull, a great big bull. And it was just like, I don't even know how to explain it. It just happened, and it was supposed to be there. Everything worked out, you know. So we ended up killing all 3 bulls in 6 days, and everybody got exactly what they wanted to. So it was just another one of those moments where it's just like, I'm not sure why it happened, but I guess it was supposed to.
Dude, that's so freaking cool. What's it like being in a business where your whole thing is like making life memories for somebody else?
It's cool, yeah. That part I really enjoy about it. Like for me, I try to. The way I explain it to people is I can control what I can control with their experience. So like I can't control the hunting. Nobody can. You know, it's hunting. These are wild animals. We're out there just we're trying really hard, but I can make camp fun. I can joke around. I can give them a beer when we get back. You know, we can make good food. We can have a good time away from the hunting. And even while you're hunting, have a great time. So I like to control the things I can control and make it a great experience. Even if the hunting, because I mean, you could go 6 days and it'd be terrible hunting, but they can come back with like the food was great, our guide was awesome, you know, we drank beer, it was a good time.
Yeah.
So I think just doing that goes a long, long ways in this business, just making it a good experience outside of the hunting as well.
I think that control the controllables thing is one of my favorite pieces of advice because it applies to so many different things.
Absolutely.
Like I think that it can be one of the most important things I'd imagine when you're out on a hunt, but it can also be important over the course of a year, where it's like, what am I going to do with this business?
Yep.
Do you embrace that in any other like portions of your life or your business or anything like that?
Yeah, absolutely. Kind of what I've realized with that is one little win a day is better than no win. You know, kind of if you can just keep moving forward and not feel stagnant in it, you know. But yeah, there's a lot of things that I feel like I can control in the taxidermy, but the outfitting, there's so much that I can't. Like, you know, I can't control people canceling, you know, I can't control if they can't afford the hunt now and they don't want to come or, you know, stuff like that. And so I've gotten better at that. It's just like, well, I can wait for their phone call, you know, just control what you can control in that aspect, but you can't make decisions for people.
For sure. I love the idea. I've heard it from a bunch of different places that business is one of the best vehicles for personal development.
Yeah, that is great. Yeah.
And you get paid to do it, which is super cool. But I think that there's an extra layer in it for you because it's like the business part is what it is, and that's hard enough already. Like, you know, like figuring out everything that goes into that. But then when it comes time to deliver the thing that is your business, that's also a fucking breeding ground for personal development.
Yeah, for sure.
Because I would imagine for the most part, you probably don't even get to choose like the types of people that you're going out with.
No, not at all.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah,
so like,
you talk to them on the phone and you get it like a little bit, but I really don't know who's showing up. Like I get to talk to them and get a little bit backstory about them, but you know, I don't really know until they show up.
Yeah.
They could just be lying out their teeth on the phone.
For sure. How has it affected your people skills getting dropped off in the bush with like people where you have no idea what they're going to be like and that whole thing?
Yeah, it's been good. You know, you kind of learn to like hunt at people's pace. You know, you can't just you get some guys that just want to go, like they'll be our age and they're in shape and you just go, or you get some guys that are older and saved their whole life for this trip. So you kind of learn to hunt at people's pace and kind of, you get some guys that want to swear and tell dirty jokes and cuss like a sailor and have a good time. And you got some guys that are real proper and, you know, so you kind of just adapt to what they're doing and kind of feel them out the first day or two and don't make them feel uncomfortable. Yeah.
That's got to be funny. Like the little feeler jokes that you put out
there.
Oh yeah,
to be
for
like,
sure.
All right,
what kind of guy are you?
Yeah.
How are we going to do this, my man? What are some of like the favorite hunts that you've had? You've talked about some of like the memorable ones as far as like being touching, you know, being able to be on somebody's like kind of last ride sort of thing or whatever. What have been some of the most enjoyable moments for you, whether that's with somebody else or like just something that kind of like set your heart on fire for for the experiences that you've had?
One of them, probably the most special ones, is when I took this 14-year-old girl out elk hunting, and we only had, I think, 2 days.
Was she one of the cussing like a sailors? And
No, her dad was a little bit. He's actually one of my good buddies now. But yeah, her and her dad came back, and we only had 2 days to hunt. It was kind of just a quick little end of the season thing, and she ended up missing this really nice bull. And it's pretty funny. I had my phone scope going on my tripod, so like it was videoing as I'm thinking, and she misses this bull, and she couldn't get a shell in, and it kind of blew up in everybody's faces, you know, and I was just not saying much, and her dad was just lecturing her. And I have it all on video, and we listen to it now, and it's pretty funny to listen to because she's a great sport about it. And so it all kind of blew up in our faces, and I just looked at them, I was like, well, let's just go find another one. Like, just cool, calm, you know, and they're all worked up. And I was like, let's just go find another one. And I knew about this bull called the hay bale bull.
Okay.
And he laid in this one drainage all the time. And I was like, let's just go kill the hay bale bull. And so we snuck in there, and we finally got to this bull, and she shot it, and the bull kind of tipped over, and it was all done. And right when we walked up to it, this bull got up and just ran, gone. Took us like 4 or 5 hours later, and this girl's like almost crying. Like it was like hard for me. You know, I'm trying to stay positive, and she's just like freaking out, her first elk, and it's gone. Yeah. But we ended up getting that bull, and just kind of seeing her like grab it and grow as a hunter. And like what was cool about it to me is the hunt was like not as planned. Like everything that went wrong, you know what I mean? But she stuck it out and toughed it out, and those are like my favorite hunts, is the ones that come down to the end and you see somebody really put in the effort, and then you see them get their prize at the end. Those ones are special to me. The guys that shoot them on the first day, I'm like, yeah, that was awesome.
I guess we got what we came for.
Yeah, I was like, that was sweet. I'm glad it worked out. But those ones that grind it out and you get them at the end are really special.
Now that you've got to see both sides, right? Like you've gotten to enjoy hunting for yourself, and then you've also gotten to be a part of like some really special stories for other people. Do you find yourself starting to enjoy more and more the stories where you get to be a part of somebody else's experience instead of like just being out there for yourself?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. Yeah. I honestly, I enjoy taking people out just as much as I go in for myself.
Really?
Yeah. It's cool to watch people like shoot big stuff and, you know, get to see game. Because, I mean, these private ranches, it's a lot different than, like, hunting public land. Like, you get to see, like, animals relaxed and in their natural, you know, they're not getting chased all over. So it's pretty special, and to get people out there to see that they've never been around that before, it's cool to just show them around and be their little tour guide of it.
For sure. That's one of the most special things, I think, is I think as you continue to progress in business, like, obviously, would you say you're 6 years in now?
I think this would be my 6th season.
Yep. Okay, so 6th season. I think that there are a lot of things that as you start to get further down the road in business, it can be easy to start looking at just the business thing. You know, what was our growth like last year? How much do we need to do this year? Is it time to hire? Like all of that stuff starts creeping in. And one of the things that I found was like the things that are exciting at the beginning when you get like your first paycheck where it's like, what?
Yeah.
How does, or even your first check in general where it's like, I just got paid to do something I love to do. Mm-hmm. Like those moments, some of that novelty starts to wear off. And I think that the things that become exciting shift a little bit.
Yep.
You know, and so that's happened to me in my business for sure, where like a lot of the things that were super exciting are a little bit less now. Like I'm not as behind the camera as much, so I don't get that reward of like going and being part of a super cool moment.
Yep.
We've worked with big clients and small clients and stuff, so some of that novelty is worn off. But I found that I had to like shift the thing that like drives me and gets me up every day away from business metrics at all to something where it's like, okay, what am I actually like giving to the world here? What are the things that like make me smile and stuff? And it's been the shift of like, I want the people on my team to be able to wake up every day and be like, fuck yeah, dude, I get to go do my passion for work today.
Yep.
And I want to create an environment that they're stoked to go to and stuff. And that's like intrinsically rewarding for me. So whether the business is doing great or whether we're going through a hard period, it's like, I get to know that these people are having a great time. And so I'm curious for you, like now that you are going into your 6th season and you've like, you know, had 5 years of this growth and all that stuff, what are the things that keep you excited and keep you like looking towards the future as you continue to grow all of this stuff?
Yeah, it's exciting. Just like for me, last year I got my little cousin into it.
Hell yeah.
And so he came out and started working for me a little bit, and like seeing him like getting his guide license in his first year, like getting into it, it reminded me a lot of myself of like, man, this was me 5-6 years ago, you know, like just bushy-eyed and like, this is awesome. So for me, that's cool, getting like family a part of it and like seeing that. And then like this last few weeks ago, like I went out bear hunting with my hounds.
Okay.
And these two boys that are in high school, I know their dad and I guess I know their uncle pretty well, and they hit me up and they just got some hound dogs.
Okay.
And so they wanted to come check it out, and like just seeing them with like their first dogs, you know, being out there and like hunting with me and me getting to like, you know, I don't like tell them what to do, but like, you know, I usually do this in this scenario and just kind of let them figure it out by themselves. But it just seeing so much of myself in them when I first started was really cool for me to hang out with them for a weekend.
Yeah, absolutely. That's got to be cool to be in a position where after the mentors that have helped you and like, you know, gotten you to where you're at, for you to be in a position where you can like reach back and start to pull other people up also.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it is. It's really rewarding. And I really enjoy that part of it. And like for me now, it's getting like younger kids. Like I love taking kids out hunting. That's really fun for me. Like I had a kid come in 2 years ago that shot a great big deer with me.
Okay.
It was like such a, like his dad was screaming, running around up the mountain. So taking kids hunting is really fun for me. Like I try to book a youth hunt every year because we get 2 days before season that youth can hunt before like adults. And so I try to get some youth hunters out there, and it's fun. Taking
That's
kids
cool,
hunting
man.
is fun.
I love that. So talk to me a little bit about where you're at today and some of the things that you're looking forward to building in the business, whether it's doing more stuff in Montana or, you know, looping Alaska back in at some point. What are the things that are like in the future right now that you're excited about?
Yeah, so this will be my second year, like having Coleridge outfitting. And so the first year it was just kind of getting some feelers. And then this year I expanded quite a bit and I picked up some more leases and
made some phone calls.
Yeah, absolutely. And I just picked up that one this week. And then I was kind of like, man, like, so a lot of people use booking agencies for outfitting to get you clients because it's hard to get, you know what I mean, just to get your name out there and get clients. And I was hemming and hawing about a booking agency, and then I picked up this last lease. And so then I finally made some phone calls and reached out, and I got hooked up with a really big name in the industry that's going to help book hunts. So they're kind of expanding there. That'll help. And I got a few other ranches in the works, but I'm also trying not to get too over my head because of what that other outfit that I really work for.
Right.
Because I manage all theirs, and then I'd have my own. So I schedule theirs and get all theirs scheduled, and then I book free weeks around because that's a special draw unit, so it's a little harder to get people in there.
Okay.
So I schedule all theirs, and then any free weeks throughout those 3 months, then I book my own. So I constantly have work going. So I'm building and then still doing theirs. So I'm trying not to get too over my head where it's like I can't, you know what I mean, I can't make it work.
Right.
Because a lot of what I run into is these guys call and they want to book a hunt, but they want to hunt with me is what I ran into a lot this year.
Gotcha.
And so it's like, well, if you can't guide me, I don't really want to go. It's kind of, so I'm kind of trying to have to build some new guys in that are going to like hunt like me, think like me, treat people like me to like, so my guys that want to come hunt can trust me that like, no, I have a guy that will, you know what I mean, take care of you because I can't be everywhere.
Seems like an entirely new challenge where not only like you got good at being you, but now you have to get other people to be good at being like you.
And people hunt through, like everybody hunts a different way, you know what I mean? And everybody treats people a different way, but I just want to be like, no, I can trust you. Like, I know this guy's going to take care of you. Like, yeah, he might make a few more vulgar jokes than I do, but he's a good guy, you know, he's going to take care of you. So finding somebody like that to where I can assure these clients that even if you're not hunting with me, that you're still going to be taken care of. So that's kind of what I'm trying to build. So 2026 will be a big year for me. This year I'm keeping it manageable, and then 2026 I'm really trying to. I got some big stuff in the works there with some different ranches that are going to come out of some different areas, and it should be really good.
That's huge, man. Well, I'm super excited about like all the stuff that you've done, and I think again, like back to that moment where you're sitting there and you're like, "Fuck, I don't want to feel like gonna let my grandparents down. I've got these boys on my team and all this stuff." Like, I think that it's so inspiring for somebody who's in that position, and that can, like we said earlier, that can be a number of different things. It's like, well, I'm making, you know, this much money at my job, and it sounds cool at cocktail parties, and when I go home for Christmas, my family's proud of me and all this stuff. I think that it's super inspiring that you decided to do everything that you did and that it's worked out for you. Because I think that people need to hear those stories where it's like, yeah, you just do the thing, and then if you're on the right track, the world will show up and be like, here's a black bear to keep you excited about doing this. And then here's a guy who's going to call you and invite you to Alaska and stuff. But I think the most important thing is taking that first step. and it's been super cool, like watching how you've done all that, man.
Absolutely. And the first step's the hardest for sure. Kind of like, I mean, don't get me wrong. There's been numerous times where I'm like, what am I doing? You know, like I could just go work at the mine, you know, I mean, I don't need a degree there and I can make good money, you know, but like the thing I've kind of like learned is like I felt like if I just keep at it and like keep getting little wins and picking away at stuff, then something big happens. And then it reminds you as why you're doing that, you know, if that makes sense. So it's like, just keep pushing and keep nagging away at it, and then you'll get a big win, and that'll remind you why you did that. And then you just get back to step one. You just keep pushing a little bit more on that, and then you'll get another good win, and then it reminds you. And sometimes these wins are 8-9 months apart is the hardest part. But if you can just keep in the right mindset for that time that something will give eventually, it goes a long ways.
Yeah. One of the things I want to talk about before we get out of here, and that just reminded me of it, is I've been really interested in this idea of like gold medal syndrome and like these mountaintop moments lately where Olympic athletes will go and they've been training their whole life to go get a gold at the Olympic Games, and then they get it. And then afterwards, they've got this huge depression because the thing that they were training for their entire lives, they got it, and it's like, okay, well,
now what?
Now what?
Yeah.
Like we did that. It seems like the way that you talk about, like, it's focusing on the small wins and like the big ones just eventually happen. What have you noticed as far as like, you know, focusing on the small wins versus the big wins for you and like that mountaintop syndrome? Because I'd imagine a lot of the people that even come on hunts for you guys, it's like, I'm finally going to get my sheep in Alaska. And then they get it and it's like, okay, well, now what?
Now
like,
what? Yeah.
Yeah. I would imagine that you've got a very good insight on like that moment. And I'm curious what you think about that.
Yeah, those moments are hard, man, because it's like, even for me, when I got like, you look back on it 5 years, 6 years ago, I'd have been like, no way. You know what I mean? I'm not going to be an outfitter yet or anything like that. But it was weird because like, I remember when I took my test, waited months, finally got my result back and I passed, and I was like, I'm an outfitter. And I had this like, you know, you get this crazy high, but it never changed anything. You know what I mean? It never like, it's just that same thing. You get that high and then it's gone, and then it's like, now what? You know, and now I'm like, what can I do now? What different things can I expand Coleridge to? So I don't think you're ever going to get like, you're never going to achieve something and just be like, I made it.
That's the top of the mountain.
Yeah, it's never there. Like I listened to this Matthew McConaughey quote, and he goes, someone asked him who his hero was. And he said, my hero is 10 years away. And he goes, my hero is 10 years now from me 10 years from now.
Yeah.
And then he said, someone asked me 10 years ago, I said, so are you a hero? And he goes, no, not even close. He goes, it's always 10 years. He goes, it just keeps someone to chase, and it keeps me going. And that really stuck with me.
Yeah. Do you think, looking back at who you were when you started, are you able to give yourself credit for the wins that you've had and like feel those, or is it tricky for you?
It's hard. Like I'm really hard on myself in that thing. And like, I feel like I soak it in and I'm really happy for a minute, but then it's always like, I want more, you know, it's almost like not good sometimes, to where it's just like, you need to appreciate what you have, you know what I mean? And move forward with it, but not just be so greedy and just stuck up that you're just going to keep going and not appreciate the things you've done so far.
Yeah. I think it's a tricky balance, because it's like that mentality of, there's a next thing, or I like, that was cool, but there's another goal, a new thing, a new improvement. I think that energy is so helpful because it's what continues to keep you moving forward, but it's also the same energy that that puts you in a situation where you don't enjoy your wins, right? Like I remember, I mean, through sports, through everything in my life, it's like most of the time when I got a win, it felt like checking a box.
Yep.
You know, like there were very few wins where I was like actually excited about it. It was more of a relief of like, okay, we did the job that we came to do. Mm-hmm. But the losses just felt crippling. Yeah. You know? Yep. And so that to me is, it's interesting because it's like that energy is so useful, where it's like consistently focusing on the next thing, but it's also dangerous because you get 3 years down the line and you look back and it's like, oh fuck, I've accomplished a lot, but I felt none of it.
Yeah. You missed all of it. Yeah. Exactly. No, and it's really hard to balance, because you want to be this person who's just like go motivated, you know what I mean? Mm-hmm. But you can burn yourself out by not, you know what I mean, taking a step back and just processing what you got going on and the things you have done. And I think I mean, it's hard for me to say that because I'm not going to do it, you know what I mean? But talking about it, you know, it just kind of just like, if you just take a step back and look at like everything accomplished, you would actually be really proud of yourself. But then you just got to keep moving forward.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Going forward, man, what are some of the things that that you can do to like enjoy this? I mean, I'm sure that there's a ton of successes that are waiting for you, and you seem to be like very much on the right track. And I think that the world is also on your side because it keeps putting these wins right in your path. What are the things that you do now to enjoy some of those wins, or the things that maybe you'd want to start looping in to be able to enjoy those as you continue to have those successes?
Probably just putting less pressure on myself. Honestly, just like, you know, you've been there, you've done it before, you know what I mean, in these hunts. And instead of getting so worked up over them, just kind of be like, let's just go out and hunt and have a good time, and kind of hunt more freely than more like it's got to happen, you know? And I think once I kind of started trusting myself that like, you've been here, you've done this, you know what I mean? This is what you do. It kind of got a lot more enjoyable to when I was like almost trying to prove something to myself, where I like, you know what I mean? Yeah. Like you're doing it for you. Like at first when I was hunting for these clients, like, yes, I wanted them to have a great experience and all this, but I was like, I'm here to prove, you know what I mean, that I can kill big stuff and do it consistently.
Right.
And so I was trying to prove that all to myself. And kind of now, I mean, I'm not saying like I kill big stuff all the time where I'm this great hunter, but like I've been there a few times and I've done it before to where I can hunt a little more relaxed with clients and kind of go with the flow.
Yeah. One of my favorite pieces of advice that I think that I need to adapt for myself is, there's so many successful people that when they get asked like, okay, if you were to go back and do it differently, what would you change? A lot of them say that they would change nothing. But the thing that they would change is that I wish I wouldn't have been so stressed out the entire time, because I spent all of this time being stressed and all of it happened anyways. So if I could have done it without the stress and enjoyed all of the small moments and like all of the things I was just so worked up about the whole time, and just like lived in that moment, I still would have ended up here, but it would have been a lot more enjoyable along the way. So yeah, dude, I think that you're spot on with that. The fact that you get to do that now and like have that foresight before you're at the end of your career, being like, fuck, I wish I would have been a little more enjoyable.
Yeah.
I think that's super cool, dude.
Yeah. And I guess like this point of it now, it's kind of exciting and nervous because it's kind of getting back to the same, like a little bit of stress too, because I'm picking up these new ranches and these new leases that I've never hunted before. And
yeah.
you know what I mean? I've never took clients, so it'll be kind of all new. So it's kind of that part of it. It kind of sparked a little bit new excitement this year too, to be like, I get to be like the unknown of just going in and see what's going on. So
yeah, absolutely.
That part's kind of cool of it too, to where there's different aspects that kind of light that spark again.
Yeah, absolutely, man. Well, you've got a lot going on. You've got new leases. You've got a growing outfitting business, obviously the taxidermy stuff too. If people want to come hunt with you, if they want to have you do their taxidermy and stuff, where all the places they can find you?
So I have a Coleridge Outfitters Instagram and a Coleridge Taxidermy Instagram, but they're not really built up too crazy yet. So the best place to find me, if you just have any questions or reach out, is Casey Cole MT on Instagram.
Awesome.
And that would probably be the best.
Heck yeah, dude. Well, like I said, without blowing too much smoke at you, I think your story is super inspiring. And for anybody else who is in that spot where they know that they've got a calling that's knocking on the door, and it's like a couple of phone calls that might be a little bit difficult to weigh, I think that your story is super inspiring for people to actually like make those calls and do the damn thing. Cause I'd imagine that your grandparents are proud as heck of you and all that stuff now. So
yeah, I appreciate that, man. And I hope they are. Yeah. They were a big part of my life. So you strive to grandparents always are, you strive to make them happy, but I was just really excited to get on here and talk to you. I know we've talked about it for a while, and just to catch up with you, I think what you got going on is really cool, bringing kind of different people on here with all different stories.
Yeah.
It's cool to listen to, for sure.
I appreciate that, man. I think the one commonality between everybody that I choose to have on is I think I lead with my own curiosity a lot of times. And I am so unfamiliar with your world, just like I'm so unfamiliar with Kylie's world, who's a fashion influencer and all these things. But I think the one commonality that so many of the people have in these stories is they had something that was calling at them where they were just like, I have to do this. And I think that most people in the world have that. But the people who actually like answer that call and decide to make the hard phone calls, have the hard conversations, and actually chase it, I think to me that's the most inspiring thing in the world. And so the fact that you were willing to do that shit, but then also be able to come talk about it and inspire other people, it's like, I think that's one of the hands down that you're bringing other people up with you. So thanks for being willing to share your story and do the damn thing, dude.
Yeah, I appreciate it, man.
It's fun. All righty, everybody. Well, you know where to find us if you're listening to this. So have a good rest of your day. We love you, and be where your feet are. Peace.